Well, thank you very much for joining me today on Window Shot, and thank you, Bruce, for coming on in today and telling us about your story. Can you share with us how long have you been in the film industry for, and where exactly are we going to find your name in the credits?
Well, I've been in the industry since, I guess, I graduated film school in 2007, PAing on commercials. I am currently a camera operator and Steadicam operator. I'm a member of IATSE 667, which is the International Cinematographers Guild in Eastern Ontario. And so you'll find me under camera operator.
Now, why is having a camera operator so important on set?
Well, you can't make a movie without a camera. Most people assume that the cinematographer or director of photography is a camera operator, and often that is true. But as shows get bigger and the crews get larger and the circus gets more encompassing, and to travel it around and to make movies with it, the responsibilities of that cinematographer get spread further and further. They've got to be in charge of all the lighting, of the grip, and they take the responsibility for the speed at which setups are set up. So having professional operators handle the floor and handle the camera positions and their movement and where they have to go, it takes a lot off the cinematographer's plate, and they can focus on the real art of visual storytelling.
Now, can you break down for us a little bit of the camera department? Because like you just said, most of us might assume that, the cinematographer, DP, might be the one operating for us. What does your camera department look like for you? And what are those different roles and positions?
Typically there's two cameras on any show, and each camera has a operator, a focus puller or first AC, a second AC, who is responsible for the slate that you always see at the beginning, and they also mark where the actors' positions are and things like this on the floor. There'll also be a DIT, a digital imaging technician. The DIT, who's responsible for retaining the footage from the cameras, and doing preliminary color grading and applying a look that the cinematographers come up with. And often there'll be a trainee who is brand new to the industry, and maybe not brand new, but they're brand new to the union industry, and they're in the process of training to become a camera second. So each camera will have an operator, a focus puller, a second, and times two for two cameras, plus the DIT and the trainee.
Now, would somebody also find this as well in the indie world or commercial world, or would this kind of build really be more specifically towards the union?
In commercials, it's the same. I guess as the commercials get smaller, you might start removing some of those people. In the indie world, you'd really need a focus puller to pull focus, and a second to support that person. Cameras have a lot of parts. They're built. They're not just they don't just come out of the box ready to go. And someone has to be responsible for that. And if you're the cinematographer and you're also operating, you've already got so much going on that building an entire camera and knowing where all the screws are that hold all the little pieces together is really spreading it thin. So I would say you should always have a camera assistant who is responsible for the camera itself, so that the operator or the DP who might be operating can walk away from that camera and not worry about it. And if they can give directions like the next shot, the camera is going to be placed in this position here at this height with this lens, and they can let that assistant handle the roughing in of that position so that they can be focused on other things.
Now, do you normally work with the same first and second and trainee a lot of the time, or does this kind of change up depending on the show for you?
For me, it's been quite a variety. I do have favorites, that I've become friends with, and it's great to employ your friends, and I will, the industry is really based on that. Your employment is really going to circle around the people that you've made friends with, really. If your friends are working, then you're working, and if your friends aren't working, then you're probably not working either. So that's a tough one because it's something you don't really have a lot of control over. But that said, sometimes I've been able to bring my friends, and other times there's already been somebody in that position before I was hired.
Now, you've been doing this for quite a while now, for instance, 2007. What was kind of your career path? Like, did you want to be a camera operator, or how did you even get into the film industry?
Well, like everybody, I wanted to be a director.
Of course, there you go.
Yeah. And so I went to film school, and I'm like, I'm going to direct. And I went to film school late. I was 9 years older than most of the people there. So I've been around the block, been around the world. I'd been places, I'd done things, I had many jobs. And so I was focused on that. I didn't actually graduate because I skipped classes to go location scouting or to cast or things like that. I was only there to make movies. I wasn't there to get like a diploma.
Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't a university, so I didn't miss out on anything.
So once you
Yeah.
basically had enough work, you were like, I'm dropping out. I'm done with this.
I didn't drop out. I didn't complete one class. Anyway, so I wanted to be a director. And when I was in school, I discovered cinematography and lighting, and I fell in love with it. And by the end of school, I was shooting at least half of the films being shot at the school I was shooting at that point. I did direct a movie at the end as well, so I got to scratch both those itches. And then as I entered into the business, I started at the bottom, I PA'd, but at the same time, I would shoot as a cinematographer anything that any amateur person needed shot. So all of the different all the different classified ads that they had back then, I'd follow them all up. I'm a cinematographer. Here's my demo reel. Here's my resume. I work for free, and I would just do anything.
You were going for it. You
I
were really
think
hustling.
at this point, and this number hasn't changed probably in 10 years, but at least 40 short films. Yeah. And in doing that, I learned a lot about what the job is. Composition, lighting, camera movement, the managing of departments. I put a lot of that together doing those 40 short films. Simultaneously.
That's a lot of short films.
Yeah. Simultaneously, and none of these, I would say a small percentage of them, near the end, of course, they were more professional shows, but a small percentage of them were professional. And I was working with experienced crew, people more experienced than I was. And I got a taste of that, and I would learn from those people all the time because they obviously have more experience than I do, and they're better at it and all that stuff. And that led me to permitting with one of the technician unions. So for years, I was a permit in the electric department in IATSE 873. And that was a game changer as far as like my understanding of the business and the scale at which things are done and the responsibility of what we're doing. And I highly recommend that. Like, you can learn a lot independently, but like no matter how good you are at whatever your job is, the day you land on a giant, multi-million-dollar show with a crew of over 100 people, it's intimidating and scary. And you realize that your knowledge base against your experience is vastly mismanaged, is not the same. And so I highly recommend getting out on big shows if you can, as early as you can in your career.
But that's also part of the cool part about our job is that we're always continuing to grow. There's always kind of a little bit of that next stage for us to be able to take on that next challenge, to be able to, like, the second we feel comfortable, we're like, okay, cool, we got that, moving on to the next part.
100%, 100%. Like, I picked up a new tool in the last year and a half, and I've been doing nothing but learning. I'm like young again. Like, my brain feels like it's plastic again, like when I was in grade school, and like the amount of input and like knowledge and writing of new code, it's been totally awesome.
And what's the new tool?
So I recently started flying Steadicam.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that's a whole thing. It's a whole huge thing. It's like learning to play the violin. Like, it's a completely new skill set and experience, both in your mind and in your physicality. It changed my health regime, changed the shoes I wear.
Now, why did it change the health routine?
Well, Steadicams are big and heavy and physical. So for the uninitiated, you basically wear a camera connected to your body. So you carry all the weight of that camera plus additional weight of the Steadicam component. So let's say 60 pounds. So, you're going to put 60 pounds and it's going to sit on your hips and your shoulders for the whole time that you're doing a shot. So you obviously have to be in shape to carry that extra weight for longevity as well. I recently did a live show where a 70-minute set where I had something around 55 pounds on me for 70 minutes straight. So that was a huge, huge physical challenge. To be honest, it was my first live show. To be honest, I wasn't sure how I was going to get through it because everything else had been, 3-minute single take or, short shots, like things like that, right? I think the longest I'd flown it in one sitting was probably 15 minutes up until that point. So
it's kind of like that idea, like, here, hold this glass of water. Sure, anybody can hold it for like a minute, but now hold this for like 30 minutes full outstretched. And
Also,
most people couldn't, and that's at 30 minutes. Now we're going to add 55 pounds to it.
Also, fill it to the brim and don't let anything drip out of it.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then how did you go from being an electric / cinematographer to then moving into Steadicam operating?
When I got on those 873 sets, that's when I realized that the operator isn't the DP. And the DP isn't the operator, that they're two different positions, because I saw it firsthand. And as a young fledgling doing my 40 short films cinematographer, I didn't know that was different. And my favorite thing about making films, and it always has been, and it still is, has been about perspective, composition, and blocking, and camera blocking specifically. So where does the camera go and how does it move with the talent or the characters in the story as they move? And how does that relationship work? And I'm talking all the way back to watching, the Sesame Street movie, in the movie theater, or seeing The Empire Strikes Back, at the Cinesphere in 1987 or whatever it was, right? Always interested in that position and that perspective. And that's the sole job of the camera operator. He or she is obviously taking direction from a director and a cinematographer, and possibly from the actors as well. But they're the person responsible to actually execute that camera position and move. So they have to do it. And they use all the powers in front of them to do it.
And are they coming up with the shot, or who's directing them?
It's a combination, and it's different every shot, right? But I would say generally it's different depending on who your collaborators are. Some people are very hands-on. Your cinematographer might actually show you the shot physically and then say, "Hey, do that," right? Or maybe there's sometimes where you literally let them shoot one of the shots because it's so specific to a vision that they've already conceived of that they need to do it, and it helps them to get through it, right? So it's a combination, but it's between you as an operator, the director, and the cinematographer. Those are the three people who contribute to that. I think your audience probably isn't aware of is how much the camera operator is responsible for it. I think a lot of operators...
Sorry, can you expand off that?
Yeah, I can. Sure. So let's say we're doing a scene, and the actors come in and they show us what they're going to do. We do blocking. And then the second assistant marks the floor everywhere that those actors go. And now we know what's going to happen. This is our sort of blueprint for what's going to happen. Then the actors go away, and we have stand-ins come in, and they can go stand on those marks so the cinematographer can see what the lighting looks like as he adjusts the lighting. And then my responsibility is, so we decided that this camera is going to be here. When that person walks to the window, the camera is going to move from here to here. It's going to have this lens on it, so this focal length. And so Bruce, how are you going to move that camera, right? Is it going to be on a dolly track? Is it going to be handheld and you're going to put it on your shoulder? Is it going to be a Steadicam and you're going to float it through the space? How are you going to do that? And then it's up to me to sort of figure out which is the best approach. Or from their advice, they may advise one of those tools. But let's say I get to the end of that camera move where the person's in the window and I'm pointing it here, and there's a grip stand in the shot, or there's a light that my boss has put in the shot, not knowing that my camera would necessarily see that. I've got to bring that to his attention. or her attention. I have to bring that to the lighting team's attention or the grip's attention, right? But it gets more nuanced than that because also my job is to compose well-composed, interesting images that support the story. So maybe it's a Christmas movie, and we get to that
We haven't
second
done
part.
very many of those.
You haven't done any of those. No. So you get to that second part, and you're looking at the two actors, and they're talking, and you're like, there's no Christmas in this shot. The set dressers put all this Christmas stuff everywhere, but when we, that particular angle, it just didn't occur to them that that angle might happen. It's an odd spot for the camera to be, but that's how it worked out. So let's get a Christmas tree in the background, right? Let's hang a couple ornaments or something. Like we need to make sure that's there. And so, believe it or not, the camera operator will walk over to a spot, stand there, and be like, okay, sets, we need 2 Christmas trees on either side of the, like you wouldn't think a camera operator would order a sets
You're really
department.
involved in this.
Yeah.
Like it's way more involved than just sitting behind a camera moving it. Like you are.
Yeah, you're responsible for everything that's in that frame. Ultimately, your boss, the cinematographer, is responsible for everything in that frame, but that person has got other things to deal with. So what can I take off their plate? Mm-hmm. So I'll make sure there's a Christmas sandwich between those 2 actors when I'm doing it over the shoulder,
And then the DP can change or adjust as he sees fit from your frame. But you're kind of putting an option together for him, and and they're like, okay, great, we love it or not. But the more you kind of do it, more the vibe, the feel you're getting with them to know what they're looking for.
Well, from experience, early in my career, I'd set a shot up and I'd literally get the DP come up to me and be like, where's the Christmas in this example? And like leave it hanging for me and be like, oh, okay, that's my job. All right. My job is to put Christmas in this shot. So now I just do it.
Now you came into camera operating from the electric to DP to camera. Is that normal for operators to get into or DP?
I don't think so. It's a bit of a misnomer. People think because they saw me lighting that somehow I made this tremendous, incredible leap from the lighting department all the way over to the camera department, which is a huge leap, right? They're very distanced. I would say the grips are more likely, if they go the dolly route to get there than a lighting person is. I would see the lighting person go straight to DP and avoid camera altogether. I've seen that. But my whole career, so all of this lighting, in 873, was part-time because at the same time I was also shooting anything anyone would give me. At that point, the free short films had turned into, commercials, budgeted commercials. I was making money doing it, and it was a balance. And it was about, do I have spare time to go do stuff with 873, right? Like I don't have a job for 3 weeks. Well, you're darn sure I'm going to call in 873 and say, hey, I'm available to work. So I was always operating a camera. So I was always building that experience, and it was the 873 experience that I realized that there was a job there where I didn't have to worry about lighting, I didn't have to worry about grip. All I had to worry about was the composition and the camera movement. And like I said, that's my favorite part of the storytelling process. And there's a job that does just that job. I'm like, that's the job I want. So it was a huge relief, like the first couple times I got hired to operate, it was like, okay, it's a hard job, there's a lot of responsibility, but coming from a DP point of view, it was like almost a cakewalk, that first job, because I thought I was gonna, like in my mindset, I go to work and I have all these responsibilities, and then I get there and I'm like, I don't have to worry about this, I don't have to worry about this, wow, this is amazing, I just gotta do this, which I'd been doing all along, but now I could focus on it.
Now, how would you say most people generally get to become operators, or how would you advise people if they wanted to become an operator like yourself and they're just starting off in the industry or just starting off in the camera department? What would be some steps that they would be looking to make?
I think the first question I would ask is why? Why do you want to be an operator? So let's make sure that there's something about that job that is that you find interesting, but also that you have perhaps a natural talent for. So it's not for everybody. And I would say that the tried and tested path is to become a trainee with the union, which leads to becoming a camera second, which leads to becoming, and then you upgrade and become a camera first, and then you upgrade and become an operator. There's a linear path there that's easy to understand and visualize.
So you shared a little bit about the traditional way through 667, how to become an operator through being a focus puller. What was kind of your way that you were able to kind of circumnavigate around there?
Well, first of all, I want to preface it by saying it's not necessarily a better path. It's just a path that I took. But I was a photographer at a young age, so I've always understood focal lengths and exposure and all that kind of stuff. And I've been composing images my whole life. Camera assistants, as they go up the process, they understand how cameras work, they understand how the parts work, they know how to support the camera. The focus puller now understands a little bit of the artistry of it because they are deciding when things are in focus and when they're not, and how to make that work in a story. And they're observing good operating. But then when you drop into the operator seat, you may not necessarily have the capacity to understand composition, right? The actual job of composing images and creating, aesthetic imagery is a totally different skill than the jobs leading up to it. I spent my whole life in aesthetics and in art and in photography, personally, not professionally, but I've always done those things. And I was a long time cinephile, and I learned a lot about storytelling and about composition through repeated viewings of movies, directors' commentaries, DVDs, things like this. And this is a foundation I built for myself for the love of cinema. And so I was destined to get into the business some way or another. I would have died to do it, and I had to do it. And taking a linear technical path would have been putting all that understanding I had of composition and art aside as I climbed a ladder. And so instead, I just went out and I did all those independent short films so I can continue to tell stories. Because storytelling is the job of the camera operator, front and center. That's what everyone sees.
So then you used your resume of building all that for your application to 667 then?
There's technical requirements to come in. They call that entering in from the sideways entering. You're not going up the ladder. And there's job requirements you need to have in order to do that. So when I discovered it existed and that I could do it, I focused on getting the hours as an operator that they required on the types of productions that they wanted, so that I could apply, so that I had the credentials. But I went into being an operator as an excellent operator, but not with a lot of experience in the operator position, working with the crew that the operators work with on a regular basis. And so a lot of that was things that I learned when I entered into operating.
So wait, you were operating on these shows without being a union member?
I was operating on non-union shows, but for the most part, I was a cinematographer on non-union shows. And there's a real big distinction between a cinematographer and an operator. It's a different position. Even if the cinematographer is operating, their attention is spread in a much different fashion. And the line from where you let go and allow an operator to take care of something is a very gray line. And discovering that and what my responsibilities were as an operator was the biggest learning I did once I started working solely as an operator. So big question for all of you who want to be operators or want to be in the camera department, don't forget that it's the #1 always working department of the film set. So you never have downtime.
So people on the phone, or people reading the books are not camera guys, camera people.
No, because you're always working, right? And that means a lot of responsibility.
You've already shared with us a little bit about what the actual day looks like for you when you're working. But what does any prep work before look like for you? Either prep the day before, or even like what are you doing when you first come to set in the morning to the time that you get on behind camera, and then what does the end of the day look like?
A lot of people have to answer for us, or we have to answer for them for lots of different positions in different departments. But as an operator, and this is strictly as an operator, we show up at call and we leave at wrap. So because there's this army of camera assistants, who are taking care of all the equipment or responsible for all of it, we don't have to actually be there beforehand. We don't have to set anything up or build anything. That's done for us. And that's part of the mystique of operating.
cool.
And that's part of why people in the camera department, they're like, one day I'll operate and then I'll get to sleep in an hour and I'll get to go home. I'll have 2 more hours of my day that I can sleep or spend my time doing whatever I want. And everybody will, get things to my whim because I can't leave the camera. Get me a snack. Get me the worst operators are like, I demand to be fed, and then the best are like, it's okay, don't worry about me, I'm good, right? And there's somewhere gray area in between where, that's just right. But so a day of operating is, I'll come in a half hour early so I can have breakfast, so that breakfast is on my time. So I don't bother anybody. I go to the craft, I get, my bacon and eggs or whatever it happens to be. And then I'll make sure that I'm on the clock at call, which is the safety meeting where everybody, goes through what's happening with the day. And then right after that, they're gonna start blocking the actors. And every show I've been on has kept camera operators there for the private blocking. So.
And what is private blocking?
Private blocking is the very first time that the actors say the lines together on set. So it usually starts with them just holding their sides, which are their little mini scripts.
And all the crew is all there watching?
Everybody's gone.
Everyone's
Yeah. So they go, private blocking, everybody get out of here, except the director, the DP, the camera operators, continuity, and if there's props involved, props will be there. Yeah. Oh, and the AD will be, the first AD will be there. And so.
And why do they do that?
It's so that they don't have to worry about having an audience while they go through the rigmarole of figuring out how the scene's going to play. They just want some privacy so they can just talk drama. Drama, motivation, why is the scene here? What are these characters going through? And that's hard to do when there's like 50 faces all staring at you or staring at their phones, being underlit by their phones, indifferent, It's much nicer to be in an empty room with just a couple of key players to make those initial creative choices.
Now, when you say that, like we generally think, okay, there's a call sheet. It's going to show us the shots we're going to take. There's a script we're going to be following that day. There's storyboards. So we already know what our angles are. If we already know all these things, why are we doing private blockings?
I haven't seen a lot of storyboards, and when there are shot lists, often they don't hand them to me. They keep them, the director makes a shot list for their own organizing. There's a lot of trying to extract the vision from the director. They'll try to explain it with their words, and other times you're trying to draw it out by their actions and by how they're pointing. So as organized as someone might be at the get-go, on the day with let's say 3, talented actors and a script, things can change. And my experience on the biggest shows that I've worked on have been that's the creative moment where they truly decide what the plan is going forward. And all of the decisions they made in prep and beforehand, before they got to that day, they were ideas to start at. And then the private blocking is where the plan actually is written.
So you have a very technical aspect of the job, but then you also have a very social, very almost political at times part of the job as well that you're also dealing with.
Oh yeah. It's a heavy load, right? We don't make the big bucks for nothing. The responsibility is enormous, and you just think about the eyes of the people who are watching the monitors and the producers, and where are they from and how much do they make a year and how long have they been planning this project? There's a lot of pressure to execute, and at the same time, like I said, if I'm working with a bunch of different departments all to try and make the composition look good, you're darn sure I better remember everybody's name, and and yes, they're there to serve the production, but they're not there to serve a grouchy jerk, behind a camera, right? And they don't have to be helpful. I don't have any authority over I have authority really over my focus puller, and that's it, really. So it's all about your social skills and your ability to, to work with people and make requests, because you're going to be asking a lot of people to do things for you all day long. And depending on how you ask them, is going to affect whether they want to help you or whether they want to do those things.
If you just want to be like a camera operator, there are some other ways you can kind of circle around that.
Sure, yeah. To be honest, I think that Steadicam is probably the best way.
Why is that?
Well, because it's specialized, and it's now very much a standard. Like on on network TV and on feature films, one of the two operators is guaranteed to be a Steadicam operator on virtually every production. There are exceptions, but for the most part, there's always one.
And is that something you buy or rent?
That's something you buy yourself. That's a personal investment. It's like buying an expensive car. Yeah, it's not easy to swallow. It's a lot. You're definitely, if you don't have a family that's going to help you, or a rich uncle, or something which would be terrific, which I didn't have, you're taking a loan.
So then what would you say is a rough ballpark if somebody wanted to buy a Steadicam that they would be looking at and investing into this thing? You said it's like buying a car, but what kind of car are we talking?
If you're starting out and your intention is to learn how to use it and just to do small little productions on little, like, mirrorless cameras and corporate videos and things, you could probably get in for $10,000. Very rudimentary, and you're gonna spend another 10 in the next year just to add accessories and add different elements to it. You need more cables. You need a cable for every camera. You need different size posts so you can change whether you're high or low. You need to have low mode brackets to get lower. There's a lot of accessories, a lot of cases. It builds up. It's like when you get your first tattoo, and then you get 1,000 tattoos, and then you got 2 sleeves, right? Like, it's a entry-level drug, for sure.
So how much of an extreme can you get up to?
Oh, you can get into $200,000.
$200,000 just for the Steadicam build, not for any.
No cameras.
No cameras.
No camera.
That's just for.
That's just all the stuff. Yeah.
Are you happy with where you're at now? Like, you've kind of been through a few things here. Are you wanting to become a DP again? Are you wanting to do anything else, or are you?
I don't think I'll ever be happy.
Are you content?
Like content. I'll never.
Are you content?
I don't think I'll ever be fully content. But what I will say is that joining the International Cinematographers Guild as an operator was, I think, me finally finding my place in the business. So I'd spent whatever that was, 10, 15 years or whatever it is, exploring different jobs and learning different things that all helped me to understand the larger process of filmmaking. And becoming an operator was me landing in the seat that I would be happy to sit in for the rest of my career.
When we're shooting 4 pages of dialogue a day sometimes, or just 4 pages of scenery, how busy is your day? What are you kind of doing? You mentioned before, you're jumping from a few different devices, but like, how many different shots, how many different takes are we doing? What does that kind of look like from your perspective?
Sometimes we're doing a lot. Like, sometimes there's an onus to have a lot of material for the editors, because there's a lot of discovery of how the story is going to play out, and they want to have many options. So if it's a many options kind of day, then we're probably shooting the same thing over and over and over again at different sizes, like wide shot, medium shot, close up, extreme close up, insert of the thing that they're holding in their hand, and I do all that for the other actor. Like, sometimes you see the blocking, and the actors do this. We mark it all down, and we look at the ground, and there's like 10 T marks, and we're like, oh my God, that's 10 3 lenses, right? For everybody, right? And you're
That's
like,
wild.
So it could turn into like just so many times you move that camera. That's why we put them on wheels. Yeah, if you don't have a dolly and you're on tripod, you're in for a real tough day. If you're on a dolly and there's wheels on it, it makes it a lot easier to move things around.
I always thought it was such a cool work of art, seeing all the dollies moving with the camera operators, with all the actors all hitting their different marks, all around, while like set walls are being flown out, all happening at the same time. That you don't ever see that that part of it. It's just like you just see what the camera operator builds in the lens,
Yeah.
but then it's like all this is happening behind the scenes, which is just such a cool thing to see.
The thing about the movie business is that making movies is so much cooler than watching movies, because there's a lot of crappy movies and there's a lot of crappy shows, but every one of them had some amazing technical achievement. You know, you're doing some really amazing things, like you described, the choreography of, you know, the camera and the actors dancing with each other is so fun, even if what they're saying is total drivel and no one's ever going to be interested in it. So if you like dancing, you know, in movie business is the place to be. There's a lot going on, and it's always fresh. It's always something new.
Now, outside of a steady cam, do you have a kit or anything like that? Any tools you would normally use as an operator, either clothing-wise or devices or anything like that?
Well, being an operator is athletic. Definitely, you end up getting a lot of stuff to help your handheld work, because handheld camera it's heavy, it's not ergonomic, it sits on your shoulder. It's not a natural, you know, and there's no sport where you run around with 40 pounds on your shoulder, right? It's not a natural thing to do, and you may not necessarily be, like, I'm tall, so it may not necessarily be the right height for where they want the camera to be. So then you start getting into tools to help you position a handheld camera in any of the positions that you might be required. So, when I became an operator, I bought a shoulder pad, I bought an easy rig, I bought a butt dolly, which is basically like a small stool that you can change its height, and it has incredibly loose and high quality bearings in the wheel, so it is very smooth. And those are all there just so I can, you know, handheld lower than, you know, my 6'5".
Now, is all this stuff an extra price that you bill production for, or is this just something you just bring?
Well, depends on the show, right? You know, like if it's a big show, then you're going to get a little kit rental for your handheld GAC, and they're just going to give you like a, you know, an amount per week. It's not a lot. It'll be like $100 or $150 a week, and that's just on top of everything because you brought your $2,000 butt dolly and your $5,000 easy rig and your $300 shoulder pad or whatever it was, right? But I mean, like if I'm going out for dailies, like I'm like, hey, we need one extra operator on this day, on this location, on this show, I rarely ask for a kit rental. I just show up and I have everything in my trunk because I just want to be able to do my job. So as far as I'm concerned, as far as I'm concerned, like I want to have those things because I want to execute to the best of my ability, and these things allow me to do that.
Now, what does a work-life balance look like for you? It sounds like it got a little bit better now that you're an operator. You get those extra 2 hours, but yeah, what does work-life balance look like?
Well, if you're working all the time and you're really busy, you know, it's great financially. Oh, you're so prosperous. You're making so much money because the overtime and all that stuff adds up, and but you don't see your friends or family at all. So, this was not the plan, but thank goodness that I got married and had a child before my career blossomed, because that meant I had time to spend with those people, and I could foster that relationship. In fact, I was able to find my wife, right? If I was single and I was working, you know, 12 hours a day or 13 hours a day on a show for 6 months, I don't even know how you would date. I don't know how you would achieve that, right? All you have is Saturday afternoon and Sunday, really.
And that's more of a recovery day.
Yeah, exactly, right? So, so you end up dating people in the business, and then you're just like, oh, you know, I'm sure that's difficult when you break up and you see the person all the time. So, not that you can plan this out, but if you're already in a solid relationship with someone and they know what the business is going to be like, you know, and you stay communicative and open, you have a healthy relationship, you've got a fighting chance. If you're working, you're not around, you're not available, not working. That could go on in an unpredictable length of time, and you have no control over it, really. So that's making those plans and making time for your family. The risk is getting back to work again.
So, what advice do you have for somebody that's just starting off, getting into the industry, is kind of right now on the freelance side of things, and they're, they've got payments, they've got rent to pay and stuff like that, but they're not getting gigs. Should they be hurrying up and pursue a career in the union? Should they just kind of buckle down and kind of like what they're doing right now? Should they be, what advice would you have for them?
Luckily, you can become a union technician and you can get a job in the union, and then still fall back and work on non-union work if there's nothing available, there's no work for you in that union. So luckily, you're not locked out of the independent industry. So I would recommend getting in, like permitting with a union as early as you can. Figure out what the minimum requirements are to do that, and get that experience and apply to get that permit status.
For any department, or?
I'd say so. I think so because it exposes you to a higher caliber of production with higher scrutiny of your work. They're operating at the highest level that you can, and seeing that is always better than seeing someone figuring something out for the first time in front of you. Yeah. So I would recommend permitting for sure. It exposed me to so much more.
What's a common mistake you see a lot of technicians make, particularly on the camera side of things?
Oh. Okay. A common mistake. I think you know what it is? I think the hardest thing to do is to picture the responsibility of the people above you and below you. So that's really hard to understand. It's easier to understand what the person below you's responsibilities are because usually their responsibility is to support you, and you've probably already done that job in your career. But understanding what the person above you needs and requires is really, really hard if you haven't had any experience doing it. And I would say that it leads to very circular conversations where people are explaining themselves over and over again, and everybody has let's see here, I don't know how to describe this. I kind of feel like as an operator, I have to be a translator for different departments. So I have to be able to communicate, I have to take director talk and translate it into camera talk for my camera team. And I have to take, camera talk and translate that into set dressing talk for the set dressers, and so on and so forth, right? Like to the point where I have to, if I talk to my dolly grip, I'll say something to them and they'll tell me something. And then I'll have to translate dolly talk into assistant talk because it's going to affect my assistant, and then maybe bring that to the director's attention and translate that into director talk so that they know that there's a limitation here, but they don't need to know the detail of how. They just need to understand it in their language, right? So
this is so much.
Yeah, like it really
wild.
Yeah, so I guess, and so I think operating is a job for someone who has a lot of experience and has been in the business and seen all these departments. And I think it's up to you to understand what everybody's job is as best as you can, so that you can communicate between all those different people. And the more experience you have with that, the better you're going to be, and the more you're going to be respected and appreciated, because if people know you understand what their job is, there's empathy there. And that gets you help and it's appreciated. People love when people know what they do.
Do you have a favorite show that you've worked on?
I would say The Hardy Boys season 2. That was a lot of fun. It was like an 80s show. So that was really cool sets, and all the cast were young, between 14 and 25. So they were like really hip and cool and very respectful to the crew because we were all older than them, and they respected that, and we could work together really well. And that was my first long show. It was the first time I worked on a show for over 3 or 4 months, and so a lot of fun memories. Also a lot of like hiccups and mistakes were made, and I learned a lot. So it's kind of seared in there. But that was a good show.
Nice. Yeah. Now you also had a bit of a side job as well that you really loved there for a while. What was that and why?
I did do, God, there's a lot, but the one we're talking about is I worked as a technical representative for Toronto International Film Festival. So I didn't work for them full time. I would work at the festival. So I did 10 festivals with them. And my job was the technical representative. And that meant that I represented the technical aspect of presenting their films to the filmmakers. So I got to meet all the directors of the movies that I screened.
That's a lot of people you met.
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah, heroes. Yeah, definite heroes.
Any hero in particular?
I would say that the funnest story was Dustin Hoffman, who directed, it was a directorial debut. He directed a movie. And we would do technical, people could come in and they could book like a pre-screening or something like that. So I knew that that film has had a pre-screening where they were going to go through some scenes from it, and I was setting up the screen with like a grid, and I was aligning it and talking to this projectionist on the radio, and then this voice beside me just says, "Hey, what are we up to?" And it's Dustin Hoffman's voice, and I'm just like, "Mr. Hoffman," and I go, "Well, this is I explain what we were doing," and he goes, "Oh, that's very interesting," and he was very interested in the aspect of it because he'd never done this before. And then we sat down, we screened a couple of scenes. He had his producer and his editor and a cinematographer all came in, and we skipped through the movie and show this scene, show that scene, that kind of stuff. He was charming, and we chatted a lot. And then he went to leave, and he goes, "Are you going to be here, in 2 days when we screen the movie officially?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Everybody's going to be great. Bruce is on top of it. We got Bruce with us. It's going to be fantastic." On the screening, I would typically they would see the director in the aisle, and I would go up to the aisle, and I'd be like, sit next to him, while the movie's starting in case anything goes wrong, right? Just to make them comfortable. And as soon as I knelt in the aisle beside Dustin Hoffman, he looks at me, and he goes, "You want a seat?" And then he turns to his entire entourage and has everybody go down a seat. And so all the filmmakers moved down one seat, and I sat next to him, and he was like, "Great." And he patted me on the leg. And then the movie started, and they're handing out they've all got popcorn and stuff. And then he's like eating popcorn. And he goes, "Hey," and he puts his popcorn in my face, and I'm like, "I'm eating Dustin Hoffman's popcorn, and we're watching this movie together." And it was awesome.
That is so cool. It's just like the perfect example of you never know what you're gonna do in this job. You never know who you're gonna meet. You never know what kind of experiences you're gonna have.
Yeah.
It's just such a cool. Yes, the hours are rough, but then you also get some cool stories like that. So with that being said, Bruce, thank you so very much for joining us. Thank you for checking this out. I want to give a big shout out to today's sponsors, Make the Films here in Toronto, for all of your studio camera grip and lighting needs for your next project. Remember, if you've enjoyed this, if you learned something from it, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to this channel for more interviews still to come. I'm your host, Tony Smith. Until next time, film on.